For the board focus on educational issues tonight, I think we have someone presenting on the Portland High School Capstone project. Are you setting us up, Superintendent?
I intend to, if I can find my notes.
No pressure. Take your time.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, this time of year is an opportunity to see the deeper learning that is happening in our schools. A few years ago, the graduation policy changed to require that students complete a capstone as part of meeting the Portland Public School diploma requirements. The capstones are akin to a thesis or final paper in that they show deep understanding of a topic and bring to bear the qualities of scholarship that students have developed over their high school experience. Tonight, Elisa Membreno, senior at Portland High School, and Mariam Douale, a junior at Portland High School, will present their capstone, which was the result of pursuing their interest in international relations by participating in the Camden Conference and a quarter-long class at Portland High School considering the question, quote, "Is this China's century?" This class was taught by Portland High School social studies teacher Troy Crabtree, who was here. Oh, here he is. Mariam and Elisa have learned a great deal about China and international relations, and each developed a U.S.-China foreign policy position that they will be presenting. And obviously, we all know that this is a timely and important question. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Crabtree and his marvelous students to take it away.
So part of this capstone requirement is involves questions. So hopefully at the end of the presentations, you could have some questions for our students.
Hi, my name is Mariam Douale, and I'm currently a junior at Portland High School. I was interested in international affairs, but there was no classes at Portland High School where I could explore this career. My history teacher told me that he was going to be teaching a class called Camden Conference in the classroom. The class talked about international affairs and specifically the current international relationship between China and the United States. The Camden Conference took place in February at Rockland, Maine, where 14 schools from around the state participated in the Camden Conference. Portland High School and Deering High School were represented by students and teachers. The main focus of this year's topic was, "Is this China's century?" The Camden Conference is a civil forum of global issues, and one of my favorite keynote speakers, Martin Jakes, the author of the global best-selling book When China Rules the World and the End of the Western Era and the Birth of the New Global Order. Published in 2009, expanded it and updated in 2012, and has since sold 4,000 copies and has been translated into 15 languages. His TED Talk on Understanding China has reached 3 million views. During Martin Jakes' keynote presentation, he talked about what China will be like as a superpower. For example, China has only fought one major war, so they're not in major debt. China's economically has the potential to be something that we've never seen before. For example, China has 34 higher GDP in 2050, while the United States will only have 15% higher. Also, China is giving money to developing countries and building better relationships with them. Martin Jakes concluded that the United States will be in competition if China becomes a superpower. During my time in the Camden Conference, I chose a foreign policy. Due to the Brown Choices program, I chose my foreign policy. I learned about trade laws and child labor laws. The trade laws with the United States and China has been tense due to Donald Trump and his new tariff placed on some imports from China. For example, the Donald Trump administration has publicly announced a hike taxes of $2 million imported from China to 25%. As a result of Trump's tariffs, the United States is losing money from goods that are normally exported from China, and China has, in China has retaliated. For example, China has published the goods traded a simple signing of 5,000 items from trade to 25%, covering places from products of in China. One of the reasons why they are the world's largest export is because businesses are employing children. These children are not being paid significant wages and have bad living conditions, which can cause really bad health problems. In my opinion, I think the best way to approach the relationship between China and the United States is to press for democratic values and to promote stability in trade. The United States should press for democratic values because supporting China's reforms now will center our ties to a generation of politicians that will eventually rise in China's government. Also, taking a firm stance against China's abuse of human rights and oppression of minors will serve as a warning to dictatorial governments around the world. Promoting stability in trade will build a trusting relationship with Beijing in order to work as partners instead of enemies. This is my position of China and the United States in order to keep peace. When you look at the news today, you see that the United States, in relationship with other countries, does not promote diplomacy. Due to the Camden Conference and the Camden Conference class, in the future, I hope to study foreign policy and political science. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Elisa Membreno and I am a senior at Portland High School, and next year I will be attending Pomona College in California. Tonight I will be presenting my own take on Chinese foreign policy, a position I was able to develop through a quarter-long elective offered at Portland High School and through the information I gained at this year's Camden Conference. The question you see here on the screen was the guiding topic of the conference this year, and although it is an incredibly difficult question to answer definitively, it is important to consider when developing a foreign policy stance. So, is this China's century? Well, in all honesty, this remains to be seen. China is certainly a rising superpower, as it has steadily increased its GDP and decreased its isolationist tendencies since the late 1900s. And has not yet, however, fully earned the grand title of superpower of the century. Two ways in which China is currently seeking to earn this title include the Belt and Road Initiative and the government-sponsored tech company Huawei. The Belt and Road Initiative, also referred to as the New Silk Road, is one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in history and would mimic the original Silk Road by stretching from East Asia to Europe. Simultaneously, the Chinese government is looking to expand its influence through the spread of Huawei's 5G network. Just the other day, the Trump administration issued a ban on telecom equipment supplied by foreign adversaries, clearly targeting Huawei, as it believes that China could access secure information through the network. Some restrictions have since been lifted, but it is clear that there will be animosity between Huawei and the US going forward. So, although these two examples do not prove that China is on its way to becoming a global superpower, they are important to keep in mind and serve as proof that China is a viable adversary for the United States. Now to my foreign policy stance. Creating a foreign policy position while the United States and China are currently in the midst of a massive trade war is a difficult task. On one hand, it is easy to identify the ways in which we could have acted differently, but on the other hand, it is frustrating to attempt to imagine long-term policies while the current ones are constantly changing. One way in which the current relationship between China and the U.S. is unsustainable at the moment is the lack of diplomacy. As I speak to my own foreign policy position, it may seem as though I believe that China will readily accept the policies that the U.S. creates. This is not the case. I fully understand that foreign policy is a result of diplomacy on both sides of the discussion, and the foreign policy that I have created is simply what I believe would be the best scenario outcome. But current politics aside, as I began to develop my stance, I settled upon two core values that I feel encompass the necessary qualities of a sustainable relationship between the United States and China, these being stability and human rights. In regards to stability, the current trade war is a prime example of why policies targeted towards long-term stability are a necessity. Although it is true that China has been exercising unfair trade practices, imposing tariffs on Beijing is simply not the sustainable way to approach a solution, as we are now billions of dollars deep in a trade war with no plan for de-escalation. Instead, I believe the U.S. should focus on establishing long-term economic policies, complete with safeguards, and should work towards creating a peaceful and cooperative relationship with China through treaties that guard against unnecessary competition. While the current administration seems to believe that ignoring China's economic rise will somehow render it non-existent, the reality is that it is growing and will continue to grow in coming years. It is imperative that the United States work towards a relationship free of hostility if we want to maintain our trading privileges with China in the future, as China is one of the United States' most important trade partners. In regards to China's unfair trade practices, the U.S. should not seek to put pressure on China on its own, but should gain the support of its allies as well, as a collective effort is much more likely to yield results than a one-on-one battle. In regards to human rights, there are two major issues that I believe the U.S. cannot ignore while creating foreign policy, the first being climate change. Although not specific to the citizens of either country, a future relationship between the two will not exist unless actions are made to protect the sustainability of the Earth. The United States and China are two of the biggest carbon emitters in the world, representing about 40% of global emissions. And as long as neither country works toward passing major climate legislations, the issue of environmental sustainability will continue to press upon us all. I believe that it would be wise for the U.S. not only to work towards national climate legislations, but to press for the U.S. and China to work together in an effort to increase environmental sustainability. The second major human rights issue that I would like to highlight is the re-education of Uyghurs, a population of religious peoples that reside mainly in the western provinces of the country. As China is a communist nation, outward portrayals of religion are prohibited. Consequently, the area where the Uyghurs reside has become akin to a police nation, with citizens under strict watch. Much of what we know about this human rights violation is a result of Uyghurs who have escaped and taken refuge in the United States. It is my belief that the U.S. should use their influence, alongside other democratic countries, to encourage the Chinese government to work towards disbanding their re-education efforts. I believe that focusing on China's human rights violations should be a top priority for the U.S. government in terms of foreign policy, as it opposes U.S. values to allow for the blatant violations to continue, especially considering China's growing economy, population, and global power. To conclude, the challenge of all foreign policy is that you must be able to anticipate the future. I believe that it is a safe prediction to make to say that China will be at the forefront of foreign policy in coming years, whether the U.S. is prepared for it or not. Now I would like to open the floor to questions with Mariam. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Does anybody have a question? Ms. Moroney?
Excellent job, both of you. Really, really great. In my former life, when I moved from D.C. here, and I was with the Department of Commerce, and I was in international affairs and would go overseas to negotiate with the Chinese in the pharmaceutical industry. And what I was thinking of as you were talking, I like both of what you were suggesting in terms of the Chinese look at their history as centuries, not years, not even decades. They look at it like a very slow drip, and that they will, because you're right, they have not had any major wars. I mean, they've had some Asian disturbances, of course, in their history, but they are, it's almost like literally a crouching tiger type of approach, and seems how they operate. When you go to negotiate with the Chinese, it's very easy they say a lot of yes. They say a lot of yes, we'll do that, we'll take care of that. But not necessarily. So I like the idea what you're talking about with regards to making sure we're in a collaborative effort with them, because as you're right with foreign policy and foreign affairs, if you're not working collectively in a path moving forward, we're going to get left behind and potentially could be a danger to us. So my question to you, sorry, I'm long-winded way, but I would love to continue this discussion over coffee or something, and I'm happy for you both moving forward onto college. But mine was around intellectual property and how much you heard, read more, researched more around how much our U.S. intellectual property is basically being taken over by the Chinese. Did you get into any of that or read anything around that very much?
Not so much. We were definitely looking into the current issues with Huawei and that network and the U.S. fears of secure information, but we didn't get into that so much.
So, an example would be that all of our technology that we are creating here in the United States quickly goes over there and is being sold on the black market, and you can get a video that hasn't been even put in the U.S. theaters is already on video for sale in their markets for like, $5. So it's so quick that they pick up on our intellectual property. So it's just something you may want to read more about as well. It's very fascinating, also very difficult to get a handle on. But that's another way that they're very savvy about taking over a lot of the hard work that our workers put into, again, technology and pharmaceuticals, whatever it may be. But great job, you two, and keep up the hard work. It's awesome.
Ms. Bondo, I think we have another question.
Another question? Yeah.
Is around what you just mentioned about the human being violation. And as two of you, I see you have two different aspects of the life coming from different communities. So as the next generation, and you see around education, and you see the Chinese youth are taking actions now. Because when you look at the past, what they have really from their father founding, I mean, Mao Zedong is the one being all isolated China for over 10 years to make China the way they is right now. So how did you see the advocacy coming up about any issues about human being violation? How you can compare what they have and what they are advocating right now and what's happening right now in the United States, and what kind of action then you see for the future as the next generation. Then you can align yourself to try to advocate for better well-being for the human's right.
Yeah.
So with China, currently young people within China are protesting, and they are working for to speak their mind on issues as human rights, because they see it as a new generation that's coming up that's like being born with technology and like hearing stuff from around the world, and they do see that China is violating major human rights, and they are working to speak their mind and to hopefully change people that are in power to change that stuff. But with the United States, I think it's just being woke and being aware of the different stuff that's going around in different countries, and trying to put your voice out there to help people that can't speak for themselves. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, exactly what I was waiting for. Thank you.
Something also that they were talking about at the Camden conference was that it really helps to push for Chinese youth to come to school in the United States and then bring sort of the democratic values that they learn here back to China. Mm-hmm. That helps create a movement. Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
I wasn't going to say anything, but then you just brought that up. Myself and the previous superintendent went to China as part of the college board that does the SATs, et cetera. We were invited over there from the Chinese government. And to your point of the students are sent away so young, away from home. And when we talked to the students, they were so in awe of the United States and how badly they wanted to come to U.S. University. And they talked a lot about that in the competition, et cetera, to get here in the United States. And when you showed the picture of the pollution, it just made me think about the fact that I wore a mask the entire time I was there, because it's almost like breathing in a wood stove. you never see blue sky. So it was quite a trip. I learned a lot, but it makes me very thankful to live where we do. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Good. If there's no other questions, I should say thank you for presenting. Great job. Loaded topic. The relationships between China and the U.S. There's so much that we can probably break down and have discussions about. I'd love to hear more about the conference and what you guys have learned about that. Thank you again so much for presenting.
Can I just...
And superintendents, yeah. Oh, yeah, we can do that.
And I would also just like to thank Assistant Principal Kathy Markey-Gerard, who's here tonight. Kathy has actually brought the Camden Conference to PPS, and she's been a champion for many years for having students engage in this important event annually. So thank you, Kathy, for your work and your commitment.
Thank you.